Hello, everyone, to the next episode of the Catributors podcast. And we've got mostly the waterline and some new exciting dev blogs to talk about. There might even be good news in this one.
Indeed.
At least partially. But first we have the waterline, which is sort of like the roadmap. First they start with what's already been done, it's already been done. And then, part of the stuff here we've already covered or is already happening currently, like the US battleships, British submarines are going to be next patch, Airship Escort is happening, Lunar New Year and so on. So the first interesting thing is they are now going to they're now going to test bringing back the former uneven tiered carriers as support carriers. And I suppose they'll still be even tiered. Like, I don't think they actually introduce ships like carriers on uneven tiers. They just use the models of those ships and use them as support carriers.
I'm pretty sure that's what they mean. It's just the ones that were, previously at the uneven tiers. So we'll still remain with the 4, 6, 8, 10, and I guess 11 as well. Now that we have super carriers as the tiering. There's some. I mean, I guess if you're a real carrier fan and you've missed, some particular model that isn't in the game anymore, like I don't know, the Tai-Ho or is Ranger in that? I can't even remember. Bogue is one that definitely isn't in the game anymore. If you missed all these ones for some reason, they'll be coming back, but we don't quite know what the actual gameplay of them is going to be like yet.
True. I mean, they say they are working out on testing minefield mechanics and smoke generators. Question about minefields, obviously that opens up a lot of questions. How big are those minefields going to be? Can you see them? Like, how are you going to detect them? Will they do damage to friendly ships? Will there be a way to clear those mines?
They aren't answering anything. It does add many questions. I think the only thing we've had so far with minefields was the Dunkirk operation when that was in the game, which had, of course, the static minefields that you had to avoid going into. That's like the only thing that we can guess based off that's been in the game previously, but it's entirely possible it'll be very unlike that.
Actually, there will be some mines in.
That's true. It is mentioned in that article that we're going to talk about in a bit.
More about that later, I suppose. Yeah. But basically new carriers, nobody knows what the mechanics are going to be, or less.
I think they had previously talked about the idea of being able to sort of do aerial smoke screens for allies, which is based off a real life concept. It's one of those things that it is actually a thing that was experimented with by, I think, definitely the Royal Navy, the US Navy rather, and maybe the Royal Navy in the 20s, basically dropping like smoke curtains in front of ships. But it didn't really catch on. But it's one of those things where it's like, oh, that sounds like a made-up wargaming thing. No, Navy's actually tried doing that.
I mean, I'll have to say my biggest concern with the thing is going to be balancing, because if you have support carriers that are drastically different in game mechanics from like strike carriers, if one team has a support carrier and one has a strike carrier, can these ever be balanced? Or will they just be, if one team has a support carrier, the other team also has a support carrier? But if that's the case, does this then mean that they are sort of like a different class and you can now have one more carrier per team? Or will the game just say only one carrier, but it's either strike or support and that one is mirrored?
It depends. I mean, one thing they are talking about here is that I guess they originally had the idea that they would be almost entirely support focused, but the fact that they're saying, based on testing and analysis, they should be able to deal some damage directly. So maybe, I mean, that's an open question. Like, it could go either way, where they could essentially give them create a parallel class of CVs that are classed differently in the game, or they might possibly feel comfortable enough with the gameplay versus strike CVs that they decide that they are just all CVs, and therefore, you might get a mixed matchmaking setup. Because we kind of have that already with battleships versus battle cruisers, which can perform very differently, and some of the destroyers perform very differently than each other. So it's not like they haven't done that before. One team might have a Shimikaze, the other team might have a is it Mogador that's the tier 10, the French one? I can't remember. Anyway, the French tier 10 that not at all built for stealth. Kleber, there we go, that's the one. That can end up, like they play very, very differently and they have different roles. But if you are the only destroyer, sometimes you get forced into trying to do things that doesn't necessarily suit your ship. So you might end up getting forced to do things in your CV that doesn't really suit your ship very well. So we'll see. I would like to, ideally, I personally think they should just put them in as like two separate classes of thing, but they might decide that's too much hassle.
Yeah, I mean that there isn't a good solution in that sense, because if they make it different classes, then they can't just put more carriers in matches. With subs already like taking the spots, some games are already pretty empty. You can't put even more carriers in there. But I highly doubt Wargaming will be capable of balancing support versus strike carriers. I mean, they can't even balance ships that are sort of the same class. I don't know. I have a feeling this is going to be a mess, but we'll see.
I mean, with Wargaming, one can always expect the best and, brace for the worst.
Well, in other news, there are going to be Spanish cruises this spring. So anyone who wanted a Spanish tank tree is going to be very happy, possibly.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think low through mid tiers will probably get actual, historically existing ships, but I suspect the higher tiers might be basically filled with paper designs, but they will at least be Spanish paper designs as opposed to what they've done with other tech trees. Cough. South American cruiser branch. Cough. So I guess we'll see what national characteristics they decide to give them.
Yeah, they acknowledge it's still too early. They don't even know themselves. But the primary feature will be so they apparently have the salvo fire that introduced back with the super ships that some ships have these days.
I do hope it's not just going to be a line of Canariuses where it's speed boost and AP only.
Well, let's hope not, because Canarius is a pretty bad ship. Well, then in other more questionable news, a hybrid destroyer. So they're going to introduce hull forts, a Fletcher class that can launch planes.
And again, a thing, and I'm pretty sure Drac has mentioned this at some point in a podcast we've done with him at the past, but this is a thing the US Navy actually experimented with. So goodness knows what that's going to look like in game. But again, not just Wargaming making silly stuff up, which sometimes they do.
I mean, But
it's one of those things where just because it existed doesn't necessarily mean Wargaming had to put it in the game. But they decided that hybrids are a thing that we must have. So I'm just waiting for the tier 11 hybrid Iowa with Harrier jump jets.
I mean, what is really concerning for me with this is that I have a feeling this is going to be a ship It's going to be very, very bad in the hands of a lot of inexperienced people. And therefore, they might buff it through the roof. And it will be a nightmare in the hands of a good player. Because the problem is launching planes doesn't synergize well with being a destroyer. Because a destroyer is a ship that needs to react the fastest necessarily, and a ship where you don't wanna look away. Like if you're a battleship, you can play a battleship more from the back, where you are sort-of safe, where you can go into concealment, maybe even between shots, and fire your guns, or you set your waypoint somewhere and you take off with your planes. And it's unlikely that there is anything truly catastrophic happening where you need to immediately switch back. But if you're a destroyer, you're more on the front lines. You could be running into the enemy destroyer any second, right? Imagine you're running around with planes and suddenly you get spotted by the enemy destroyer, right? The seconds that it takes you to realize that and go back might already have gotten you destroyed, more or less. It's a destroyer. There will be situations where you can be safe, or certainly park your ship in a kind of safe spot currently and quickly go with your planes. So if you time it right, it can be a very powerful addition. But I have a feeling that there will be a lot of players who might just be playing this like a carrier from the zone war then, or be just YOLOing in and dying while they are off with the plane somewhere.
You kind of already see that, right? Even just with the hybrids that are previewed right now, the premium hybrids that we have in game, you sometimes will see people just completely ignoring the fact that they're a cruiser or a battleship or whatever, and just pretending like they're an aircraft carrier fully, which usually doesn't result in them being particularly effective on their team. So it being a destroyer is not really going to change that, and the fact that destroyers can end up having sometimes quite an outsized impact on a team. If you've got one of your destroyers that is just not engaging as a destroyer and instead pretending to be a rubbish carrier, that could definitely be a detriment. But I don't really know if there's a good way to be fair to wargaming. If there's a good way to, if you put anything into a game, players are always going to find a way to play it in a way that you haven't envisaged. But on the other hand, it sometimes feels like wargaming doesn't even begin to try and think about that side of things, and they just stick things in without giving it any thought whatsoever in terms of how people might approach it, how people might play it.
Yeah, just because you can do something as developer doesn't mean you have to. And sometimes it's a mixture of responsibility, right? Part of it is, players will try to exploit or misuse anything that they can, or use it to their advantage. On the other hand, as a developer, you can't just be like, yeah, sure, it's obvious that this isn't going to cause problems, but we'll do it anyway because it's the player's fault. As a developer, you have to, think a little bit before you do something. But that's
that's complicated and it takes time, though.
Yeah.
So, why bother? Not that I'm cynical or anything.
No. Well, in beta news, West Virginia 44 seems to be actually coming.
Yeah, that one's been promised for, it says here, September 2021. For some reason, it feels like it was longer ago than that, but maybe that's just the last time they talked about it. But that's finally going to appear in the game. And
yes.
It's becoming a bit of a trend at this point. We also, I think last time we did the podcast, talked about Tashkent 41 as well. So
yeah.
On the one hand, it's interesting to see ships at different stages in their development. But on the other hand, you've got Wargaming basically milking it to add a whole new extra premium in, instead of just having here's one ship in the tech tree, and here's this state that it was in this year, and here's this state that was in this year, which, to be fair, would involve a bit more in terms of if you could have a single premium ship, but it was in sort of different refit states, and the different refit states meant it would be in the different tiers. I don't know if that's mechanically possible in the game to do that, but it does feel like they're milking their existing content and, making some minimal changes to, here's some different AA mounts, and maybe here's an extra turret or minus a turret. And hey, it's a whole new premium. So yeah, I have slightly mixed feelings about it, but they're not wholly negative feelings, I guess. I think the main thing with Virginia 44 is that, if I remember correctly, the big thing, I'm actually just going to pull up my West Virginia. I think the refit, the post 44 refit was sort of heavily better AA.
Mm-hmm.
But AA isn't really a selling point for a battleship these days. So I hope they add something more to it than just it's going to have heavily upgraded AA, because that for me won't really be a good selling point, not these days. I mean, that might change if they do something wonderful with an AA rework. I don't know. But even if you look at something that, in theory does have better AA up one tier, the California, it's still not great, particularly. Yeah. So, if it's just basically California but with bigger guns, that's just going to be a bit disappointing, to be honest. So I hope they find something a bit more involved to do with West Virginia 41, but I guess we'll see. At least it won't have the California's problem of the smaller caliber feeling more ineffective against higher tier ships.
Yeah.
Because West Virginia at least has 16-inch guns.
Yeah, well, I mean, we will have to wait and see what starts to throw on it. But like with all of those refits, I don't much care. Like with all that Wargaming has done, if they just want to use different models, throw a number on it and change the stats slightly and re-release them, I'm like...
Yeah.
Like
if it's a more involved refit, like if they put out a tier 4 or a tier 5, like an OG Queen Elizabeth class battleship, for example, which would look quite radically different than War Spite or the Queen Elizabeth we have at tier 6. That something like that might be fairly interesting. But then you look at the differences between Renown and Renown 44, for instance, and there's not that much between them. So yeah, I think the big question mark at the time was why they didn't. I have a vague memory of this, that people were wondering why they didn't actually just do the late war refit West Virginia and instead went with the start of the war state of West Virginia. Which doesn't have that much going for it. You don't see it that often. It's a tier 6 with 16-inch guns, which is unusual, but it's pretty unremarkable, and the guns aren't that great at their tier. Just because, if I had to I nerf their performance a bit just to not make them... I don't even know about if horribly overpowered. It's just the fact that they could basically overmatch everything. But you compare it to Mutsu. I still play Mutsu for fun, and I see other people playing Mutsu for fun, but I very rarely see West Virginia 41. So yeah, if they put a more fun version of West Virginia out, I guess that's okay. It then just makes West Virginia 41 completely obsolete. And we'll probably lead to people going back and asking, hey, why didn't they just do this in the first place?
Like, do we know which tier West Virginia 44 is going to be?
I would guess a tier 7, unless it's like heavily up armored, and in which case maybe tier 8, but I don't know, my guess would be tier 7.
I mean, was West Virginia one of the slow ones? Because it's possible that they originally wanted to put it at like tier 6, because the higher tier you go, the more
it's a sister ship of Colorado.
Battleships are.
So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, they would have to give it a fairly big buff to have a Colorado at tier 8 that actually works. And you look at Kansas, and it kind of doesn't work very well. So yeah, I don't think anybody wants another Kansas. In fact, it'd be a Kansas with fewer guns, basically. So the guns would almost have to work better.
we'll see what they do.
But my money's on a
Suppose.
tier 7.
Well, then a new dockyard is announced. It's going to have Dyson, a tier 9 Japanese battleship with torpedoes. So I don't know, a Wami maybe.
Yeah,
Sort of.
this is. I mean, how many are there now? There's. That's going to be the 3rd.
I mean, there is
Musashi,
Musashi,
Iwami,
Wami.
and Heisen.
Yeah. So it's going to be the 4th.
How are they going to differentiate it? I guess we'll see. I mean, it says it's going to have torpedoes like Iwami. It's going to be 1910s design, so it's. Wasn't there something in the dev blog about it a little while ago? I can't remember. Or is it in one of the newer ones?
I mean, it might have been like introduced in a dev blog, and I forgot about it.
Yeah, I'm sure there was there a picture at some point? I can't remember, but yeah. But the main thing is it's going to be a much earlier design, so I'm expecting kind of a battle cruiser. Oh no, it was the Dyson I was thinking about. That's the tier 9 they've put a picture in of. That is the Dyson. Okay, why was I thinking? Okay, I don't know. My brain's just right. Okay, my brain's caught up now. So yes, they have mentioned Dyson in a previous one. Dyson and Colossus is the dev blog.
Ah, yeah. I think I vaguely remember.
Yeah, here we go. So yeah, it was going to be kind of battlecruiser style, poor armor, large dimensions, good speed, long range. So I don't know what we're going to get exactly. You know, it may end up being sort of Japanese incomparable.
Yeah, I mean it's like the 5th battleship, Japanese battleship at this tier, and the 4th premium or something like that. I mean,
at least it won't just be another proto Yamato. I suppose it's the main thing going for it. Didn't actually exist though, so I don't know how much it's going to get people's attention. I have to say, of the tier 9s, I probably like the Iwami the most. I mean, the Musashi is good, but I just like the accuracy of Iwami's guns. And the torpedoes can sometimes be very useful as well. I would imagine it'll be the same long lance 20-kilometer torps. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not too hard. Like, being a dockyard ship, probably not gonna be that great.
True.
Eisentorps are 10-kilometer.
Oh, they are 10. Okay. Why am I thinking 20? It'll be the same torps then. 10-kilometer. Oh, yeah, it says actually here on the review stats. So, yeah. Anyway, so, you know, that's the next thing, Dyson.
Yeah. We'll probably talk about it some more when the dockyard actually arrives or so. Then an actually interesting change that's planned is repeated battle entry with the same ship. So basically you'd be able to like play your ship, and then if you die you can go back to port and play the same ship again while it's still sort of in battle. I'm honestly not sure what I think about this change, because on the one hand it means if you just YOLO in, you could just like YOLO in, sink, quit to port, YOLO in, sink, quit to port. Like,
True.
It's just if you're grinding a ship, you could just not care and just push in like a madman.
That's definitely a consideration. The other side is, you know, we're talking from a position of both having hundreds of ships in our port, whereas somebody that doesn't play very much, or somebody that's new to the game and maybe only has a half a dozen ships, it would be much more beneficial to them, just because they're not, like, if they're grinding one particular ship and they get sunk in a battle, they're not having to sit around and wait for 10 minutes for that ship to come back. So it's potentially a double-edged sword. I think they would have to. I mean, maybe they're just relying on their existing report system. That they think that would be good enough to punish players that do just YOLO in and die stupidly. But
I mean, people can still, like, people do that right now.
True.
The question is, would it actually change people's gameplay?
Yeah, would people do it more?
So, as you said, like, it's a good thing, especially if you're new to this. And I mean, sometimes, just you got unlucky, bad things happen. Or if you're a new player and you don't understand the game yet, and maybe you get death struck, and then you'd have to wait for 10 minutes, right, before you can play your ship again. You can understand why that would be unfun. And there is no reason for you not to play again. So as long as it's not like, so as long as people don't abuse it to grind through the ship by not properly playing, it would be a good change, I suppose.
Yeah, it definitely benefits new players far more than anyone else.
Other April Fool's Day, we will come back to later. The Seychelles map is apparently going to come in spring. A new map is always nice.
Yep. Seychelles should be nice and sort of, tropical seas. Bit of sunshine.
Oh, good for an Atlanta with beach camo.
I think this is the one where they said previously they were trying to base it on the actual location, and reading this, we have to reintroduce some changes. So it's not going to be a one-for-one recreation of an actual area, or not one-for-one, but an actual geographical representation. It seems like they have changed things for gameplay purposes, which is fine. That's fair enough. At the end of the day, you want a balanced map over an actual location.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking forward to a new map.
It was interesting that they actually started with that as a basis, though. So we'll see how much is actually recognizable.
It's a shame that they don't have a picture. It's a shame that they don't have a picture.
Yeah.
But with that, we can transition, since we were talking about islands, to improvements to island collision mechanics in the dev block. And this is just something that I have to read to you, because this is I'd say one of the funniest wordings also, or let's just read this, right? So, the changes being tested involve updating the collision model of islands to exactly match their shorelines as visible from above water. I mean, shouldn't this anyway be the case? Like, they are like, how could we improve island collision mechanics? How about if what you see on the map is actually how things are? They describe this as this is like this I don't know, they had this enlightenment, they had this moment, they're like, guys, what if the shore is actually where the shore is supposed to be?
I'm fair to them here and say that what they've obviously started off with is the idea that all there are different underwater topographies on shorelines. So some shorelines it'll be very steep drop off, other shorelines it'll be a very gentle slope. But the thing is, this is a video game. We're not sailing around with depth charts of individual maps to know where we're going to get stuck and not. So although this is a very gamey change to make, I think it's a good change to make, and it's maybe a little silly they haven't done it sooner. So I can see why it was previously, but you'd think in the process of doing all of the underwater rework for the submarines, this might have come up and they might have made this change at that point when they were basically reworking every map to add all the underwater terrain. but they didn't. They're only just doing it now for some reason. So, yeah. Unrealistic, but it's fine. It's an unrealistic game anyway.
I mean, the rework was the biggest problem, right? I think with the rework, they wanted it to look realistic, and that's why they made it so that you couldn't actually see where you run into. But like, you can't do this in a game where you have no way to check the depth, right? We don't have a tool where we can see how far above ground we were. There are no charts. There is like it's just plain stupid that you can run into an island without being able to see that it's there.
Yeah, and we can't toggle on our little depth sounding device and or do it the really old fashioned way and throw a knotted rope overboard.
Yeah, I mean, if they had a mechanic like that, then they could make a more realistic shoreline. And then the other thing is they also tried that you'll actually slip away. So if you still get stuck, even though you cannot, and well, the most important part is you can see where you can go. And if you still get stuck, then the land will just push you away. Well, we'll see how that works. But I mean, the sad part is we've now been stuck on islands for about 4 years. And after 4 years, they'll be like, you know what? We could at least show the people where the shore is. Like, the time it took them to realize this simple, obvious thing, it's just mind-boggling. It's almost as if they've never played the game in the last 4 years.
Now.
No, I'm sorry if I got a bit ranty there, but this has been such an annoying thing for such a long time. And they came out with the statement that, hey, how about we actually show you where the shore is? Would you like that?
I think this has really only come about as well because we've had repeated, especially after the underwater rework for subs. You know, it introduced whole new spots where people could get stuck on islands, and I think this is their just eventual solution to that. Is just right. We'll make it so people can't get stuck on islands sideways anymore, and if you ram into an island, you'll just be able to back off. Which, you know, is what you do at the moment, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I'm. It's good that they're finally addressing this, and it will be hilarious to see how they sneak a bug in that catapults you on top of the island.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be even more new spots where you get stuck unexpectedly.
Well, in other news, what did we have next? Oh, we have the Trouble in the Hot Tub devlog, I think.
Yes, so this is a thing I have been dreaming of for a long time.
Yes. And, well, let's hope that the devlog is not an April Fool's joke, but on April Fool's Day, we're gonna get bathtub battles back. Something that we've all fighting for 6 years, and it's happening. I think about 6 years.
Is it really that long ago? I'm trying to look at. I know I did a video back then.
I mean, it was, I think, the first April Fool's event, kinda, and the game is kinda 7 years old.
It was a fairly early one. Just looking at YouTube videos now. Yeah, 6 years ago. That's it. I think it's one of those ones where, you know, we've had the same Halloween things repeated all over and over and over again. Yeah. Why can't we have the hot tub mode? And here it is, finally. There was even a mod I used for a while, which actually let you use the hot tub port as a background, but I think I was only able to use it for a couple of patches before it broke, sadly. Yeah, hot tub background, please.
Yes, and I mean
I want that.
They even added a cat, so
yes. Now this time around, though, there is going to be a difference. It's not going to be little toy ships anymore. You're going to be sailing around, and we did foreshadow this. You're going to be sailing around with ducks, inflatable rubber duck things, duck toys, and you're going to be dropping mines.
Yes. So this is where they're probably testing mines as a weapon that they then want to put on the support carriers and possibly ships. I mean, if Wargaming likes something, they'll probably put it on everything.
They'll release, like destroyers or something like that. There'll be a line of destroyers, and it'll be like, well, the gimmick of these is they lay mines.
But aside from possible future implications, so yes, you're going to be sailing rubber ducks in a hot tub. And, I think they really should have animated the cat that it plays with the water, but I suppose that might be too much to ask for. But yeah, hot tub battles. We've waited a long time, and they are back. I'm excited. It's the best news in years.
It certainly looks good. Probably the only pertinent bit of information we really have about the mines is they don't sink, they don't move, and they explode after a certain amount of time. If they don't, get bumped by an enemy ship first. So they're not going to drift around the place. They're just going to sit there in the water and be a fixed thing.
Yes. Also, does it say if the ducks, do they only have mines? I don't think
it doesn't actually. It says they've been added with the new armament type mines. And that's all the information it has. So I don't know if, it might be that's the only, like maybe you have to ram your enemies or something. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work exactly when you don't have guns or torpedoes. The duck models don't seem to really have anywhere where you would stick a gun.
I mean, I'm also not sure where those ducks lay mines, but I suppose that's...
Well, they don't show you the back of the duck, so...
That's true. That's true. Yeah, so we obviously don't know how fun the mines are going to be, but just that they are bringing back hot tub battles is...
Yes. It is a bit...
Nice.
I mean, just looking at the commanders, they all seem to be sort of vaguely action film related, kind of like one's Terminator-ish and one's Rambo-ish.
Sorrow,
and,
probably.
I don't even... Is one supposed to be like John McClane, maybe? I think one's supposed to be kind of John McClane. None of those to me really say anything about, baths, hot tubs, or whatever. So I don't quite know why they've gone with that as their theme for the commanders, but it is what it is, I suppose. They could have gone with something at least a little bit Navy themed.
I mean, then there are 6 special duck commanders with portraits. Yes. Donald Duck is Blackwing Duck. Oh, is that a thing? I would have thought that's like Sorrow, or however that's pronounced in English. Like, what was he, a Mexican hero also?
Yeah.
Yeah, Don de la Duck. Blackwing Duck is modeled on Sorrow. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, I mean, good news, I suppose. Well, I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yes, it should be fun. I mean, the fact that you'll be able to bounce your ship off things.
Oh, yeah.
Your duck.
Right, they said something about, like, there will not be collision damage. Instead, there will be bouncy things, right?
Yeah. The one thing I wish this did have, and it would be a shameless bit of fan service to old-timey World of Tanks players like me, but if they had an AMX-40 themed duck. But sadly they have not gone that route at all. Alas.
I
just
wonder
on
how...
the subject of mines as well, actually, that tickled a memory that the Royal Navy, I do now wonder if we're going to see this as some kind of premium. And, obviously I will win all of the internet points if I'm proved correct at some point in the future, but there was a class of very fast mine layers that the Royal Navy commissioned.
Oh, no.
In the early 40s, I think. The Abedeel class. And they had minimal armor and pretty low armament, but they were very, very fast. There were 40 knots ships, 40 knot cruiser-sized ships and they basically just carried an absolute crap ton of mines and had like 4-inch guns or something like that. So minimal sort of viable armament for a cruiser, but extremely, extremely fast cruisers. And I think they ended up being used equally as transports as well as mine layers, just because, regular transport ships didn't move quite that fast. So there we go. Aberdeen class premium ship. I'm calling it now at some point in the future, now that mines are going to be a thing.
Well, I'm now vaguely afraid.
So there's also some nice looking camos in this article.
Yes. This update will also bring early access to PanAmerican Cruises. Wait a moment, so we now have early access to the US battleships. Next patch, we will have early access to British submarines, and then the patch afterwards, we will have PanAmerican Cruises. Are they now really going to have one line each month?
Apparently so. I'm not at all. I don't think I'll be going for the PanAmerican Cruises especially, but I do like these camos. I don't know if they pull from any one particular art tradition. I think they're all themed slightly differently, even though the colouring is different. But I don't know enough to distinguish, my Mayan artwork from my Incan, from my Olmec, from whatever other cultural groups and civilizations there were. So it looks like they're using a variety of styles there rather than doing some kind of generic mishmash. But maybe they are doing a generic mishmash. I don't really know enough to say. But I just like how they look. Maybe I'll get them and then, get the ships as just port queens so I can look at the pretty camos.
Don't worry. They'll only ask for your soul and $150 for you to get those camos. Yeah, they do look nice.
I mean, the other one that's based on that kind of Aboriginal artwork style is the special camo they did for the Anchorage, which is another one of my favorite camos in the game.
Not sure if I remembered Anchorage. Not sure if I remember how that looked.
Here, I'll see if I can find the picture of it.
I found one. Yeah,
you've done it quicker than me. I'm gonna have to resort to taking a screenshot of the ship in my port. But yeah, just occasionally they come out with these camos that just look absolutely, fantastic. Anchorage is definitely one of them. Don't play the Anchorage all that often, but it's nice to look at in port.
Speaking of ports, Rio de Janeiro will get an update and will have a celebration. And there is even probably a name for it. There's a carnival.
Oh,
going with
Mardi Gras. I think is it Mardi Gras or is it just Carnival? Because Mardi Gras might be more of is it not a southern US thing? But Mardi Gras is part of Carnival. Okay.
Like the details they put into this, like you can see like those like there's a tractor carrying like I don't know how you call this, exhibition pieces or whatever, and like there are trucks with people on them that are dressed up and so on. Float, yeah, that's the right word. So yeah, it's a tractor carrying a float. Like the detail they put into this board is it looks here amazing. I'm presuming there's going to be like fireworks, sound effects, probably music playing, and I assume those move.
Okay.
And
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Now, obviously, the sad
animation going
part
on.
is you are barely going to see anything because you're looking at a shipping port. So there is an amazing amount of detail that's probably only vaguely visible to you.
It would be nice if you had a bit more freedom to move around in the port, like do a bit of free cam like you can in replays, even if it was in a restricted area, but not just around the ship, and you can actually see some of the details. Take some nice pictures of your ship.
Get out of your boat, customize your
Yeah.
character avatar, run around, explore.
But apparently, in Brazil in particular, it's held the Friday afternoon before Ash Wednesday at noon, which marks the beginning of Lent. So they have a big party. And also, the reason it's called Carnival is it's literally from Latin because you're not eating meat.
Okay.
It's the same root as carnivore. So there we
Interesting.
go. I never knew that. That's just kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, so that should be bright and colourful
And another win for the art department.
yes.
Meanwhile, ranked battles going to be bronze and silver tier 8 and 9, gold tier 10. Then band battles, they are removing Shatter and adding Hotspot currently. And we are back to the art afterwards. They are adding Star Kitakaze and Star Edinburgh. I'm not sure if is this from a certain franchise or is this just wargaming?
I don't know. I have to. I'm looking at these and they look a little bit like I can't remember which set of camos it is. I'm thinking now. But they look vaguely like some of the camos that they've had in previously as tie-in things, but it doesn't mention it as any kind of tie-in event. So this just might be some previously unused concepts for some of the. We've had 3 different sets of some space themed camouflages, remodels.
I mean, there were the space camos for the space battles, and there was one anime space.
Yeah, there's been a couple of anime ones. There's been ARP anime. There's been, I think the space battles one had like 2 different sets.
Yeah, but I think most animes are based on actual. I mean, they look futuristic, but they're based on animes where the ships are in water. But wasn't there like one collaboration with an anime where the ships were in space?
Yes. Yeah. There's a camo for the Kansas, and I think there was 2 other camos. And it was. I had to look this up. It was it's some German name because, of course, you know, Japanese anime, so of course they give it a German name.
So, no, my name was in water. The Transformer camos we have already in game. I don't think there's a change for that, but those camos will transform when you detect it. We don't know how, but those 2 camos that are displayed here, they dynamically change appearance right in battle, depending on whether the ship is detected. So we don't have a picture here, but apparently, like those camos, maybe they light up, maybe like they unfold some wings. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, just even the way I don't think these are going to be perma camos for Kitakaze in Edinburgh. I think these are going to be separate ships with the same stats, just based on that wording. In fact, it says added the ships Star Kitakaze and Star Edinburgh, so not quite copy-paste models, but copy-paste some form of content to add some premiums, I guess.
Also, important note here, there will be 2 two new captains, and I think they said something about unique voice. Yeah, with unique voiceovers. And one of the captains seems to be a bipedal robot cat person. I approve.
Kind of. Bit of a weird looking, but sort of.
I mean,
yeah,
those
I can see that have kind of cat ears.
Those are clearly like sort of cat ears, right? And also like claws sort of in the fingernails. And I mean, yeah, it's a sort of bipedal robot cat with neon lights. I approve.
Still trying to find the name of this anime.
I mean, we get a premium Kitakase. Yeah, I suppose, because they didn't say camels, they said ships. So there's probably going to be a premium Kitakase and a premium Edinburgh. And I'm sure they'll send you a bundle for $100 or 150 or 200.
Here we go. Legend of the Galactic Heroes. That was it. The one that no one can ever remember because it's definitely a lot more obscure than ARP or High School Fleet.
Probably also not as popular.
Well, popular. I think they've done like 2 or 3 iterations of the anime or whatever, but it's just, I don't know. Like if you're a hardcore sci-fi anime fan, you might know it really well, but it's not one that's sort of made a crossover into any kind of popular, I don't know. The only reason I even remember it is because I did buy that Kansas camo because I thought it looked like it's a really nice camo. It's just unfortunate that it's on a pretty rubbish ship.
Yeah. I like, no matter how good a Kansas looks, I still won't play.
Yeah, there was a camo for the Parseval, the Kansas, and the Z-23.
I mean...
And they were all based on spaceships in the camo. The anime.
I'll be honest, Star Kitakase might be tempting, especially with a unique voice-over robots captain. I mean, I still have the balloons back from my CC days that I never paid for, so, you know.
Oh, I ran out of those a long time ago. I've actually had to buy some since then. The horror.
Well, then in other news, they added 4 submarine commander emblems. I mean, they look nice, but they still won't make me play submarines. Then new background symbol added. So it's like this. What do you call this? Like from comics? I'm thinking like the old style, Batman's, like the POW thing that you had when.
I've definitely got some specific name, but yeah, it's the sort of action moments.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, can't hurt.
The thing below that's quite nice. The special commanders, prevent commanders.
Mm-hmm.
It says here, it's possible for one player to get several duplicates of the same commander from opening more than one of the containers. And I've got a bunch of, I think I've got like 3 anime Montpellier commanders, and like yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they're changing it so that it will actually, if it comes up and says you've got this commander, and then you get another the same commander, it'll kind of re-roll and give you one you don't have already.
Mm-hmm.
So that's if you're a completionist, that will be quite nice. I mean, I can't say it's bothered me to not have every single ARP commander, for example, in the past, or every single anime commander, but if you're a particular fan of a particular thing, then that's quite a nice change.
Definitely.
It means that you're not gonna. One of those things we have to give them credit for actually being kind of a bit more consumer friendly, because Previously, you would have just had to keep buying boxes until you had everything that you wanted, whereas now you will have to buy less boxes, and you won't just get inundated with duplicates for things you already have.
They'll still rip you off just a little bit less.
Yeah.
By the way, also I just saw Commander Ashley Violet got a special voiceover. I think that was a captain from some Twitch drop thing or Twitch Prime thing or so. And it was basically a random captain I made up with, which was, I think it was a female captain, but they didn't even bother to change the voice to it. Like it had, I think, the standard male voice. And that apparently that commander now gets a special voiceover. So that's nice. I mean, I'm not sure if that commander was ever available again. It was, I think, this one event a few years ago.
It's not one I recognize the name of, so.
Sally says Ashley Violet was a mission. Was that a mission? Okay, I thought that was a Twitch thing. So I could be mistaken. But I remember it was a few years ago. So it's been a while. Yeah, I think that concludes this dev block. Then next we have also more information about new ships, the European destroyers. I mean, they've been announced a while ago, but this time we have even stats.
It was mentioned in the Waterline article as well, but we have pictures and stats. So going from tier 5 to tier 10. So it will branch off at, what's the current tier 4? It's the Class Horn, I think, or Clay's Horn.
Question.
Something like that. But yeah, these ones, they are going to go a slightly different route. So, I mean, the current branch, they're basically all suites. So I guess it's fine that they were consistent. These ones are still going to be consistent in terms of, I guess, their gimmick, but maybe a little less consistent in terms of armament, just because they are a bit more mixed in terms of the nations that they are going to be from. So yeah, we're going to have we're going to start off with I think it's a Turkish ship.
Yes. I mean, Turkey ordered them from Great Britain, apparently.
Yes, it's going to be essentially a British ship, but it was one that served with Turkey, although it was only given over to Turkey after the war. They're a bit of a copy-paste line in some regards. I mean, they're all ships that actually serve. Probably the most unique one is the Tier 9, but I guess we'll get to that. So yeah, at Tier 5 we have the British but Turkish Muavinet, which I'm probably pronouncing horribly wrong. Then we have Stored, which I think was, again, a British destroyer that was transferred to the Norwegian Navy. So this is one that was basically given to the sort of Free Norwegian Navy. And not a native Norwegian design. I think it was going to be a native Norwegian one. It'd have to be a lower tier one. Grom, which is the sister ship of Bishkovica. It was nice to see that in game. Then we kind of have Split, which will be basically a French-ish destroyer, but it's going to have somewhat different guns.
Yeah, they say it was based on Le Fantasque. Boiler and turbine plant was purchased in UK, fire control system in France.
Yeah, Yugoslavia, the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, I don't think they had a particularly big navy or a particularly high capacity for making their own ships.
And I mean, apparently it was captured by Italy before it was completed, and then the Italians completed it.
They'll say it was completed with British American weapons, so we're not sure what caliber it's going to have exactly. Because it says it was planned to have 140mm guns, but if this is the post-war completed ship rather than the originally as planned ship,
we do have stats.
Yeah, completed with British American weapons, so we don't know what caliber that's going to be.
No, we do 140.
Oh, it is going to be 140. Okay, all right. Oh, yes, there we go. So if I go down to the stats. So it is going to be the original Czech 140mm guns, which is a pretty hefty caliber. So I mean, 5, 6, and 7 are all 120mm, and then we go up to 140mm.
I mean, I suppose they are kind of focused on guns. Also, the Tier 9 gun layout seems weird.
Yes, that's going to be kind of funky. So again, it's quite a British-looking superstructure. And this is a what-if ship, I think. So this is the Lambros Katsonis. Again, 140mm guns. This one looks like it's quite a large ship. It actually says based on one of the pre-projects of the E-class cruiser. And I wonder if that is... we're going to have Drac on to talk about these at some point, I think.
Oh, yeah.
This one seems like it's got quite an interesting development history to it, potentially. But if it's the same E-class that we have in game, of course, that would be the Emerald and its sister ship Enterprise. This does look rather different than that. But it's definitely got a very... that superstructure is very British destroyer looking, so I think they've as this is a what-if and as this is supposed to be sort of modernised for World War II, I think they've taken a few liberties there. The turrets are quite distinctive, though. Those gun shields and quite high pedestal mounts.
Yeah, also, I mean, it means, like, right, if you're facing forward, you can use all 3 of those guns, but once you turn, one of those guns becomes unusable.
Yes. So I guess we'll see.
You have 6, so you seem to have 3 in the back. I'm not sure how they are laid out in the back. Is there going to be a similar placement? Can't quite see, unfortunately. So, interesting.
Yeah, tier 10, we're essentially getting a Mogador. So French, we're going down slightly in caliber, but French 139mm guns. This one is definitely a what-if.
Yeah, I mean, the most concerning part about this line is obviously they got smoke, and starting with Tier 8, they're getting radar. Now, the interest...
I mean, it's not without precedent. We had, of course, the Pan-Asian destroyers having that combo, but then being in the doldrums for quite a long time as a result. But it looks like these ones are not necessarily going to have the choice between radar and another consumable.
Yeah, but the only one that has smoke and radar is the black.
That's true.
Now, the thing about this radar is it has 9-kilometer range, which is substantial, I suppose, for destroyer, but only 10-second duration. And keep in mind, there is the 6-second delay right after you radar for other ships to see. So other ships other than you only have 4 seconds to actually shoot.
I can see it having the potential for basically scaring people off a cap, but in terms of actually doing any damage, I guess we'll see. There was actually one thing I read somewhere that the Gdansk, which is supposed to be another Polish ship, I mean, the Grom actually existed, but Gdansk is the Polish name for Danzig, And I saw someone pointing out that the naming convention doesn't fit with the actual names that Polish Navy ships used, even into the Soviet era, the period of communist Poland. They named their surface ships, which were destroyer sized, basically after various kinds of wind and weather phenomenon. They didn't name them after places. So this might end up getting its name changed. It's not really a good name, and they have done that in the past. They've changed the name of ships after people from the relevant language communities have gone, hey, that doesn't make any sense.
True.
So we'll see. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they've all got quite short-range torpedoes. The Tier 10 has 7.5 kilometer torps. So these are definitely all going to be very gun dependent.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? When we look at the Tier 10, they have like 9.5 detection. Now that will go down to what, about 8 or so? Or
yeah, it'll be either be the high 7 point something or low 8 point something.
Yeah, maybe 7, 8 or so. So something around this. So pretty bad detection for a destroyer, but definitely able to stealth raider. And with the smoke screen, they can potentially park at a cap and keep the cap raided and sit in smoke. They're also, like, while the duration is very short, it has a 60-second reload, so you can't like cap in between raider charges. Which, yeah, we will have to see how it works. And I mean, they are kind of focused on their guns. So,
does it say anywhere what smoke they're getting?
I haven't seen anything about this, so we don't know if
it just says smoke generator. So we don't know which one it's going to be. I mean, if, for instance, if it's a US duration smoke, they could potentially be very annoying to play against in terms of having smoke screens with much flatter arcs on their guns than US destroyers. And if they can sit there for a long time and fire from smoke, that could potentially be very annoying to play against, but very have high utility. Whereas if they're quite short smoke screens, then if they're like British style smokes, then you're going to have to rely a lot more on just running around at high speed and hoping you don't get hit. So I guess we'll see. I mean, they might end up just being a kind of hybrid between sort of French and something with smoke that's still a bit shooty. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they're like, I guess. The ranges are at least all right, and they're able to boost them up a fair bit, but they're not. I don't think the ranges are going to be, especially the high tiers. I don't think you're going to be able to get the ranges up as high as you can with the French destroyers. I mean, they're not going to be.
I don't think you. Yeah, but I don't think you want to. Like, since you have your radar, you probably don't want to be sitting in the back like the French.
Yeah.
And I mean, with your smoke, you might be more relying on getting close and using it. That's also interesting enough. Pretty bad turning circle at 810.
Yeah. These maybe almost would be more interesting with a crawling smoke rather than a static smoke. I don't know.
I mean, do you really want a crawling smoke radar destroyer? That seems a bit questionable.
With a very short duration and the fact that you would have to sacrifice all of your speed in order to slow down to use the crawling smoke.
I mean, it might be a very short duration, but keep in mind still, anybody who is prepared is still gonna get one salvo off, and you as the destroyer will probably get like 3 salvos off of your shots.
Maybe.
So, and you can do it again in 60 seconds. Now, interestingly enough, while they can stealth radar, they can't stealth torp.
No.
But pretty fast torpedoes, so...
the damage is pretty weak, however.
Yeah. Probably not really there to, well, against other destroyers they're going to be.
Yeah, other destroyers or damaged ships, perhaps. Yeah, those are really weak torpedoes. In fact, I think those are the same. Are those the same damage values as the?
I mean, they're pan-European, so they're probably.
Maybe.
Wait, does it say if you get like the small pan-European spread?
I don't know if it says anything about the spread. Right, I'm just comparing torpedo damage now. I don't think they are exact matches. Yes, slightly more damage than Halland's torpedoes, for example. I think the same speed, but a lot less range.
Yeah, 7.5. So
yeah,
a bit less range than your concealment. I mean, interestingly enough, the ship does like 41.2 knots and has a speed boost, so you can go really fast with them. Which is also, I mean, well, I'll have to see, but you're not going to be running away from them easily if you're a destroyer, and they can radar you. So if that thing is charging you,
yeah, I mean, yeah, you might end up in a situation, but I mean, if someone's trying to do that at the start of a match and charge in and use their speed to try and get another destroyer, they're probably just going to die themselves. Not that will stop some people trying that, of course. Yeah, they're all pretty fast, I think. 38 knots, 39 knots. The stored is only 36.8, but yeah.
Fast but bad turning circle. Yeah, well, at least at higher tiers. I mean, we'll have to see. Obviously, they still undergo testing, so it remains to be seen if they remain that way.
Yeah, the concept, given that it involves both radar and smoke, the concept might end up changing. I guess we'll find out.
Then
they could be interesting. They could be.
Yeah, they could be interesting. They could be an absolute nightmare for the game, or they could just be okay. We'll see.
I don't think we've really tried the very short duration radar on a ship before. I mean, Soviet radar doesn't last for a particularly long time, but it still lasts longer than that.
Yeah, it lasts 15 seconds and it lasts 10. But keep in mind that they can't really stealth radar, and it really depends on how much damage those destroyers can push out in those 10 seconds. And keep in mind that with the short reload, like a minute isn't very long, so they can catch you again very quickly. It might even, like, the radar might be ready again before the one smoke screen is over. So they can sit in smoke, radar you, and then still have another radar charge before the smoke's gone.
True, yeah. Especially if it ends up being a US smoke, then definitely. Or even a shorter duration smoke. I think like the German ones last just over a minute, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, keep in mind you deploy smoke for a while, so your last puff lasts a bit longer.
Yeah, true. Although some ships longer than others.
Yeah, there's also a flag that you deploy for longer.
Yeah. Yeah, the Royal Navy smoke, I had to look it up. You only get 10 seconds laying time and it disperses after 40 seconds.
Yeah, the short bursts.
Yeah, if it gets Royal Navy smoke, that's the one scenario where the smoke wouldn't last long enough.
But that has a short cooldown, right? So if you got like Royal Navy smoke, that would even be. I mean, if it's all the characteristics of the Royal Navy, right? That would be even more insane, because you could always have the smoke radar ready, right? You'd like radar, you'd smoke, and then smoke is
true.
Its cooldown isn't that long, so I mean, not always, but most of the time you'd have both things ready.
You can't quite. I mean, the Royal Navy destroyers generally aren't the sneakiest, but they're sneaky enough that that won't really be an option with these ones.
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
we'll have to see. Yeah.
So we'll move on to the other ships in this.
Yeah, there is the European cruiser Ellie.
I don't know if it'll be Ellie or Eli. Given it's double L, it's probably Ellie.
Yeah, I would have. I mean, obviously, I'm not an expert in pronunciation. I'm not sure in which language. I would have presumed with double L it's Ellie, but I could also be mistaken. So
Essentially, it's going to be an Italian Condottieri class cruiser, which actually was used by the Greek Navy in the 50s, apparently. And I don't know if it's going to be radically different. It's not going to have the fuel smoke like the Tech Tree does, but the existing premium Italian cruisers don't have fuel smoke either, the mid-tier ones.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't have smoke, it doesn't have sap, and it does have a hydro, so it looks like a standard cruiser with nothing truly special.
Yeah, I guess the one to compare it to would be the Duca d'Aosta. It does look like it's going to have pretty decent range for Tier 6, though. 16.5 kilometers is nothing to sniff at.
Yeah, that's okay.
Reload is decent. HE and AP. It's going to have fairly short range torps.
Yeah, like the German 6 kilometers.
And it looks like it's going to have hydro and defensive available.
I mean, not that defensive does anything.
Yeah, so it's a variation on the Duca d'Aosta, it looks like. Which is the Duca itself has actually got a spotter, so it kind of doesn't need the spotter with the extra range. It's kind of got the baked-in extra range and a better rate of fire, but worse torpedoes.
Well,
Yeah,
I
nothing
mean,
too radically exciting
Yeah.
there, but it'll be the second Greek premium, I guess,
I suppose.
because we've already had the Velos, I think. Was that on sale at some point already? I can't remember.
Velos. There was this event where you could buy it, and then didn't they?
Yeah,
I don't know. Did they sell it for coal or so afterwards?
Yeah, okay. So it was available at some point already. All right, okay. I couldn't remember suddenly. It's not one I've really seen in game, I have to say. Maybe not many people went for it.
I mean, honestly, these days you barely like a lot of those new premiums you just never see. So, I just opened the page, by the way. So she was available in sequential bundles as well as for direct purchase. She will be available for the balloons in the armor in early 2023. So I suppose it wasn't like it has been for the on sale only for money for a certain time, and she will be back for the balloons in the armory.
We can expect that in the next couple of months.
Probably.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, it looks all right. I think this is one more for the Greek fans rather than for anyone wanting something different. The Duca isn't terrible. It's very squashy, but most mid-tier cruisers are very squashy, so that's not really a surprise.
I mean, we also have to wait and see how the LA is gonna be like released. It's like True. I don't know. Do we know, for example, what's gonna be the middle ship for the next dockyard? They usually have like a free ship in the middle somewhere.
That's true. Yeah, maybe an existing thing, or it might be this, might be something else.
Then Nottingham, a British cruiser, has also been announced.
This one's like funky looking, and I bet this one we definitely have to get Drac to talk about. This one is wacky. Yeah, it's basically What If Nelson, but a cruiser.
Yeah. And,
I mean, it's right up until the. And again, this is a thing that this was a proposal that was kind of drawn up and presented to the Admiralty, and what if we made some of these? And the Admiralty went, no. But yeah, this was. It actually says here it was a Vickers design. So yeah, published as an essay, and it was basically, I mean, the same thing that inspired the Nelson class. The sort of a development of the, was it the G3s or the N3s? I think it was the N3s that were the battleships.
I don't know.
But essentially doing a clustered together turret design to minimize the length of the Citadel space required. But yeah, it obviously ended up never actually getting built. It does. It's got quite a lot of back end, though.
Yeah,
with the triple turrets and then whatever else is back there.
There's a lot of engine in the back, I presume, with those smokestacks.
Yes.
How fast does this go?
You compare the 16.5 kilometers with the Ellie. This thing's only going to have 15.7 at tier 8. And I don't think it says it's got a catapult either. No, it doesn't. This one might be a bit awkward. It certainly looks funky.
Yeah. But reasonable conceal. I mean, this is tier 8, right? So you have the concealment module.
True.
So your concealment is going to be like 9. You got 34 knots speed. It's decent.
We'll have a repair party, which is always useful.
Oh, yeah.
And it will have
shot burst
like
smoke.
Some British. Well, it looks like some destroyer smokes. 15-second duration. 15-second laying time, and then 40 seconds duration. That's actually slightly longer than the destroyers, but I guess it's a bigger ship that's going to take longer to slow down.
Also, torpedoes and 8 per side.
Yes, quite a heavy armament for a Royal Navy cruiser.
We will have to see how the angles are, but I mean, honestly,
the speed's nothing special, but the range of 10 kilometers is pretty decent.
Yeah. Like, you've got, 9-kilometer detection with 10-kilometer torpedoes and a short burst smoke. Could be interesting. Honestly, that could be interesting.
I think I mostly picked it because it looks super funky, as opposed to the other ones it mentions from the same publication, which, as it says, resembled the county class cruisers. So they'd be a bit more conventional looking, and instead they went with the wacky thing, which I'm perfectly okay with, because there were some very wacky things that were put to paper. I mean, 9 guns is a pretty decent armament, but
you're a big target.
How often will you get to use all 9 of them at once, I suppose?
Well, in a smoke.
True, but them being cruiser guns means you're not necessarily going to have that much. Like, it's not particularly long range, 15.7. So you've only got possibly 4 kilometers of stealth firing.
I mean, honestly, I'm afraid it's going to be sort of. Wait, what's its turning circle? 700. Could be worse.
Not great, but not terrible. I'd see the smoke more as of a disengage tool for something like this, to be honest.
I mean, the problem with this is, right, with this turret layout, you're probably not the best. I mean, we'll see what the angles are, but you're probably not the best kiter. With all of your
it'll be a
guns at the
terrible
front.
kiting ship. You've probably got that central turret if it turns all the way around available, and maybe the front turret if you angle out enough.
So yeah, you look like you're a pretty fat, long ship. That's not good at kiting. That's very squishy. And well, at least you have a short burst smoke in your torpedoes. I'm getting a slight Yodo vibes. I mean, Yodo doesn't have smoke. But...
I think I'm just looking at the picture. I think those are the torpedoes amidships. There's like a lifeboat, and then you see two things behind that I'm pretty sure are the torpedoes. So the angles should be decent.
I mean, these days with like the snaking torps, they make up the angles as they want. I suppose.
That's true.
Big box of gimmicks 78. I mean, maybe like it's honestly looking at this, it could be horrible. It could be interesting. It's hard to tell based on what we see here. I think it could be a fun ship if done right. But this is wargaming we are talking about, so it might just be horrible.
True. Oh well, I guess the thing to compare it to will be the Albemarle. We do also have now the Hampshire at tier 8, which is another funky looking one. That's the Stretch Limo County class.
Which one was Albemarle again?
Albemarle's the Tech Tree tier 8. Also 9 guns, also not particularly great range, 15.7.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking with like the
9.8 kilometers detection. So if it does a little bit better in terms of Albemarle than detection, that'll be quite nice.
Well, we'll find out, I suppose, at some point.
Yeah.
And of course, we couldn't end it on a ship that might be fun. There is a submarine.
Everyone's favorite class.
I
think this is one people have wondered why it wasn't in the game already, and instead they went with the guppy refit of the Balau class. So yeah, the Gato were like the kind of the big kind of change in design philosophy from the early warships, or the subs that they went into war with, and instead they ended up with ships much more suitable for Pacific warfare.
I mean, it does have a secondary. So you can't control your own gun, it just shoots for you. But you have the homing torps with only 6 kilometers range, interestingly enough, but you have 16.5 kilometer regular torps that are, I mean, that's, I think that's gearing range, right? Probably different other stats. Don't think gearing hit quite so hard. What does gearing have?
Let me look that up. Apparently the Balau was a follow-on from the Gato, but yeah, basically it was a bit of a step change. I think that's the phrase I was looking for from previous designs. Okay, the torp damage, 17,900, 16.5 kilometers.
Okay, so these do 200 damage more than the gearings.
Okay, quite a small variation.
At the same speed. So I'm not sure why they needed 200 damage more, but I suppose. And like those are the non-homing ones. We have a 67-point-second reload, and I think you have 6 in the front, 4 in the back. So basically, what does gearing have? About twice as much reload, roughly.
Yeah, it's. Not quite sure what setup I've got on this. It's 103 seconds, but that's with various equipment upgrades.
Yeah, so you have but you have like 6 gearing has 10 torps, right? So you have technically you also have 10 torps, but you have 4 in the back.
I think it'll be somewhere around the 2-minute mark, reload for the gearing unmodified. I'm doing the maths in my head, right?
And so if you basically only use the front torpedoes, you have roughly the same amount of fish per time as a gearing. If you use the back, you've got to have more with the same range and slightly more damage. So they just want the sub to be, I don't know, a long range torpedo ship, maybe? It does nothing else.
It does seem like it's going to be almost more of a submersible destroyer than anything else, with its using these long range conventional torps and the short range.
So yeah, it does 34 knots on the surface.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be historically accurate, but they gave up on that for subs a long time ago. Let's see, what did the real Gato class manage?
So
21 knots surface, 9 knots submerged.
I see. So honestly, this to me looks like they wanted a submarine sort of gearing just without the guns. So you have, I mean, technically you can have more fish per time as a gearing, right? But you are reasonably fast, and you just can throw out this long damage fish. Like you can just go flank and just keep out throwing your long range fish. And if something gets close, then you probably switch to your like knife fighting homing torps and screw them with 89 knot torpedoes at home. And you have a secondary for funs and giggles. But I think they've just like given up on this and we're like, yeah, how about we just make a submarine that's a destroyer that can dive? Sort-ish.
Essentially.
I mean, well.
I mean, it does actually have sort of destroyer-ish surface detection as well. 5.8 is probably on a par with...
I mean, 5.8 without modify.
True.
So...
okay, yeah, that's a little bit better than the Balau.
I mean, you do have... I presume you also have the captain's skill on subs for concealment and the mod... Or, wait, would I have that? I don't know.
I honestly don't know. I've played submarines so little.
So even if you don't have any modifiers, it's basically destroyer concealment, and that's obviously on the surface, right? You can just go periscope depth, and you'll probably be down to 2 kilometers, 2.2 kilometers, something like that. Because on periscope depth, you're almost proximity spotting usually.
Well, I don't think you do get a captain skill that increases your stealth with a sub. It really shows how little I've played or paid attention to subs, really, since they released. I just don't want to play them. Yeah, there's a 4-point skill that increases your speed when you have less than half health.
Sure.
Increased torpedo damage, adrenaline rush. I mean, there's just less sub skills overall. Sub-captain skills. So
you're probably stuck with the 5.8, which is pretty good concealment, and then you can just go periscope depth and you're even better and outspot any destroyer. So, I mean, it's going to be a destroyer that's designed to just go at the flanks, hit at range, spam out fish, and is unhuntable in a sense, because obviously it can just submerge and you can't track it.
Yeah. Yeah, its main counter was going to be, well, same as other destroyers, radar and aerial spotting, essentially. So, I mean, the fact that it has such short-range homing torps automatically makes me dislike it less than other submarines. They are probably my main point of contention with submarines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the homing torps are probably just more or less night fighting or self-defense, or if you were there, because like also with like the starts of the other torpedoes, it's I think more designed for just sit back and throw out fish in the complete safety of your submarine that can just dive out of any trouble if there ever were trouble. Well, it's gonna be annoying, like all the subs, I suppose.
More subs is always going to be annoying.
Well, was there something? Was there another dev block? I think that was about it, right?
There was some other
Some changes to PanAmericans.
Yeah, there's been a
Changes
couple of changes
Colossus.
to the Almirante Grau has had successive nerfs from its initial stats. There's the King of the Sea perma camo for the Halland, which is quite a nice looking one. Sort of grey and gold, slightly
Oh yeah,
Viking themed, I guess. It's got kind of a Norse style pattern embossed on the hull. I'm never going to own that camo, but it's a nice looking one.
true.
There's also the unique upgrades are being a bit tinkered with. I think they've made a copy of there's some battleship they've made a copy of, one of the tier 10 battleships, because they were testing out specifically.
Yeah, I heard something about that.
Unique upgrade as well.
The problem with the dev block changes to unique upgrades is that they only post the changes and not what the whole upgrade does, which means since I don't know that by heart, it's utterly useless for me.
Yeah, they mostly seem to be buffs, interestingly, but there's a couple where they are nerfing things.
I mean, we'll have to see once they're finished if they are useful or not, I guess.
Yeah. We'll see if they become a bit more desirable to use, some of them. Yeah, I mean, for instance, the Minotaur's getting double the smoke generator laying time, but it's going to clear 5% faster, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's going to be even more of a Mimotaur.
Yeah. So we'll see. I don't know if I'm even using unique upgrades on many of my ships. I think I'm using the unique upgrade gearing, and I'm pretty sure I'm using the unique upgrade Shima, and I think that's it.
I'm using Des Moines Yamato. I don't think that's it.
Oh, I probably am using Yamato as well. That's the one that hits your turret traverse, isn't it?
Maybe it's the one that makes your guns more accurate.
Yes.
And yeah, it makes your turrets turn.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are the only ones I'm using. Oh, it's nice that it's not been completely forgotten by Wargaming, because it for a while there it seemed like it had been completely forgotten by Wargaming.
I mean, ever since they said screw it, we are just not gonna balance submarines, deal with it. They have sort of remembered that there was other content.
Yeah, there are other parts of the game that exist other than just submarines.
So,
I mean, they kind of also made the point in the I watched the very start of the Waterline video. I didn't have time to watch the whole thing, but they sort of made the point of, well, now we're settled into the new studio home in Belgrade in Serbia. That maybe we'll start to see things picking up a little bit as well, in terms of just. I mean, not just concentrating on core things, but
they are already releasing a new line now every month.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's about it, right?
Oh, I don't know if there's any other articles on the. There's going to be some Valentine's Day mission things to do with Bismarck, I think. There's currently a thing where if you buy some doubloon packages, you can get a coupon through an article to get the Tier 3 Chinese cruiser, the Ninghai. Which, there's a big thing saying it's free. It's free if you buy some doubloons.
Yeah, if you buy at least 12,500 doubloons, you can get the free Tier 3 ship that you'll never play.
I don't think there's really anything else. There's also the various early access things to do with the hybrid battleships. I have. Can you remember with the previous battle passes? How many stages have they had? Because I actually managed to get to the end of this one. And thought,
60, I think.
Yeah, I thought I was. It was strange I actually managed to get to the end of it. So I don't know if this is going to be a permanent thing because the current one is 40. And I was surprised to see that I'd hit the end of it, and then was like, "Oh yeah, no, other ones had more stages." So I was sort of cynically wondering if that was so they could sell more premium battle passes this month for people getting the Nebraska, or if it's now just permanently going to be only 40 phases. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. If it goes back up to 60, then I'll know I was cynically correct, and they did lower it just to get more doubloons out of people, so they could get the Nebraska early.
Yeah, also because. Maybe that was why they delayed the early access. They reduced the stages and they were like, okay, people can get this in 2 weeks done, and that's when we released the early access. So basically they could start the early access with this ship. Maybe that was why they delayed the early access, so people could actually have the Nebraska then. I don't know.
Maybe. Well, I must admit, I'm one of those people that I just had some doubloons on my account, so I was like, okay, I might as well get the Nebraska early and see what it's like.
Oh no, I wouldn't. I'm not even spending 3 doubloons on that.
Well, it's for the content. It's for the content. That's what I keep telling myself, just rocking back and forth. It's for the content. Yeah. Anyway, it's definitely not a heavy hitter like Kearsarge. It does. The guns do feel more accurate, but. Like all of the other hybrid battleships, man, it goes down so quickly to HE spam. Just because you've got that big squashy flight deck.
That's why you are on the full carrier. Only full carriers are immune to fire.
Yes, indeed.
You need more fuel on your deck to be immune to fire. Well, and with, I guess, that piece of wisdom, and wish you all a good night. And we'll be back next week. Bye.